Hello, and welcome to this segment of Arts Talk. I'm Sherri Burr, your host, and my special guests for this episode are Valerie Plame and Sarah Lovett. Welcome, Valerie. Welcome, Sarah.
Thank you.
My co-host for this episode is Darren McDougall. Welcome, Darren.
Thank you.
You two lovely ladies have just produced this wonderful book. It came out at the end of 2013.
October 2013.
October 2013, called Blowback. And so it's your first collaboration. So let's have you just tell us a little bit about what the book is about.
It opens with our heroine, Vanessa Pearson, who is in Vienna. And she's there to meet an asset who has signaled an emergency meeting. He's an Iranian nuclear scientist. And he has some really valuable intelligence to pass on to her. She is a CIA operations officer. She's under deep cover, and he wouldn't have signaled this meeting unless it was absolutely imperative. And what she believes he is going to give her are the locations of a secret Iranian nuclear facility. And just as they meet, he's already late, so her anxiety is building. Where is he? Where is he? What's happened? But he comes, they do meet, and he begins to tell her where this is located, and he is assassinated.
Yeah, I know.
Then we're off to the races.
Chapter 1, an assassination. You ladies know how to begin with punch. Yeah. So let's just talk about, how did you come to collaborate?
I think it's probably 5 years in July that we had our blind date. We had our agents put us together. We shared a publisher, and and Valerie had brought the idea of working with fiction. So they did a match.
Oh, okay.
And it worked.
That's good.
It's like OK Cupid, except for writers.
Okay.
No,
I like that. Because Sarah, you have a long history of novel writing.
Right.
And Valerie, you'd written the memoir Fair Game
That's
about
right.
your experiences. So this is a first in novel writing for you.
Oh, absolutely. And fiction is a completely different animal than anything. What I'd done previously in my old life was just rather dry intelligence reports, and then I did the memoir about the leak of my CIA identity. So this was a whole new adventure.
I bet. Let's talk a little bit about Fair Game, the novel, the memoir, excuse me, Fair Game, the memoir, and Fair Game, the movie. One of the things that was fascinating about the book is that you picked up the book and there were all these black lines through it. So how did that come to happen?
Those are redactions, and it's about less than 10% of the book, thank goodness.
Okay.
But what happened, the reason that exists is because when you join the CIA, you are obligated to sign a secrecy agreement, and you promise not to reveal any classified information, which I think is absolutely, sounds reasonable to me, and I signed that. When I had resigned from the CIA in 2007, because obviously I could no longer continue my job in any sort of covert capacity, thanks to political shenanigans, I had to submit my manuscript to what's called the Publication Review Board of the CIA. And they made the determination that I was not permitted to acknowledge any agency affiliation prior to 2002.
Wow.
So I just sort of fell from the sky.
Right.
And it had nothing to do with protecting classified information. It was really just further political retribution.
Right.
So my publisher, the one that we shared, David Rosenthal, who is then with Simon & Schuster, he has since moved on to our publisher now with Penguin, but he decided to go ahead and publish with those redactions. And what he did, he hired an investigative reporter. She's very good, Laura Rosen, and she wrote an afterword that helps the reader understand what's underneath those black lines. And it's not classified information.
Right. That's great.
And it made the redactions actually made the book more powerful in that you're talking about these covert things you were doing, and then the political blowback.
Yeah.
And seeing that political blowback come in and be shown through black lines, through redactions was really powerful.
Thank you. I think that was David's intention, was to
Right.
get the visceral reaction of really. I mean, I'm a professional intelligence officer. I'm not in any way going to betray any sort of national security information.
Exactly. I mean, and it wasn't your choice to be revealed. I mean,
That would be true.
That just happened to you. And I think I remember reading that the fallout was pretty incredible because you were undercover and there were people who you had converted as assets. And then once your face became public, they were exposed as well. And were some of them actually assassinated because of the revelation of your identity?
I don't know what happened to everyone.
Okay,
I know what happened to some. But beyond that, there's people with whom you have completely innocuous relationships. But because I had traveled and moved around a large part of the world, sometimes in a covert capacity, sometimes not, everyone with whom I'd come in contact falls under suspicion if the government was looking for that sort of thing.
Oh, right. I hadn't thought about that. Even kind of normal friends.
Even
would
normal
be-
friends.
Okay, wow. And you know, one of the things that I thought was really powerful about the movie is they would show you leaving the house and you're talking to your husband and you'd say things like you're going to Cleveland, and then the next scene you're in like Amman, Jordan. And I thought how interesting that would be to try to keep your work secret from the most important person in your life.
Well, the movie was essentially true, but things like that, my husband knew we had small children at the
Right.
time, toddlers, so he had an emergency number and he knew if I didn't actually go to Cleveland and then secretly get on a transatlantic flight to someplace else. But yeah, nevertheless, my husband comes in a sense out of that world. He had served as an ambassador, lived and worked in the Foreign Service for many years, so he had already had quite a bit of experience working with the CIA, so it wasn't a completely weird universe. He knew when not to ask.
Okay. Yeah, that must be interesting. Almost like secret codes. Like, don't ask me what I'm doing. Right? Bye. And you couldn't ask when you're coming back, right? And maybe you wouldn't always know when you're coming back.
Not always.
Yeah.
No.
And do you think that you were able to channel like some of the experiences through Vanessa Pearson?
That's the hope,
Yeah.
to try to make it as realistic as possible. When Sarah and I first met, we both spoke about the complete absence of a realistic and yet entertaining female operations officer in the whole genre.
Right.
And so I wanted very much to try to create that. And with Sarah, talking with her about how to make it seem realistic without, of course, revealing classified information.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's actually the character's commonalities with you. I was wondering how autobiographical actually is this? I know it's a fictional story and it's novelization, but how much of you is in the character?
I like to say she's Vanessa Pearson in Blowback, and hopefully for a long series is a younger, much smarter, much better at foreign languages character than I will ever be.
Great.
Yeah, and it's great to have her character because we're so used to operatives being like James Bond, right? So it's nice to see this woman who's young, who does have screw-ups, but she's also highly intelligent, and she's also trying to figure out how best to get the information to uncover this secret Iranian facility, and that she's really committed to uncovering this facility.
Absolutely. I mean, you have James Bond on one hand, and on the distaff side, you have Angelina Jolie or the Bond girls, which are really attractive and glamorous and sexy, but have nothing to do with the reality. So.
Exactly. Let's ask the audience if they have a question for Valerie or Sarah about their book, Blowback. Does anybody have a question at this point?
Do you plan on this being a series?
Go ahead.
Yes. In fact, we're finishing the second one right now. So
All right.
yeah.
Thank
And
you.
there's a question in the back.
I was just wondering, as I was reading, can you hear me? Okay. As I was reading into the beginning of your book, it really built, and so I was instantly glued to it. And so I was wondering if that came naturally, or if that was something that you had to really work on. and really be very intentional about that.
Sarah, why don't you answer
You're
that?
talking about the pacing and the
Yeah.
and the hook and being sucked into the book, and it's intentional. It's a demand of the genre.
Right.
It's sometimes very difficult because I think, we've talked about this in this. There's a saying in drama and fiction that only trouble is interesting. And sometimes it's frustrating because you want to have the chance to paint more scenes and have more nuance with moments, and you can't always. You have to, really pace that. So I would say, it's intentional. We knew what we were doing and where we wanted to go, but there's always a push, and there's always hard work to do that, and you lose some things that you'd like to keep in just so it moves faster.
I would just add, because of Sarah's background in writing thrillers, she really understands pacing and how that works and how to pull readers in. So we didn't have any of that in Intel reports.
And Sarah, too, you guys are good at giving the audience a rest when necessary. Because, if you put her through the paces, we, the reader, need to kind of catch our breath as well. So I thought that was good that you were pacing that way as well.
Good. I'm glad you got a little rest when you
Yeah.
were reading. That's a tricky one too, because it's also the idea of collapsing so much into a short amount of time, because a thriller, really, the shorter the better as far as
The
time
ticking clock.
The ticking clock. And so there were times I function on sort of sleep deprivation a lot. That's just my MO. But I would look at poor Vanessa, we would, and say, wow, she's been up for,
36 hours again.
She needs a break.
Yeah, I mean, it was amazing. It's like, did the poor girl even get a chance to eat? Because it was just continuous.
She's very driven.
Yes.
She's young. What does she know?
There you have it. Okay, so we're going to wrap up this segment of Arts Talk. We're going to take a break, and we'll be back in a few minutes with Sarah Lovett and Valerie Plame. Hello, and welcome back to this segment of Arts Talk. We are fortunate to have Valerie Plame and Sarah Lovett as our guest, and my co-host, Darren McDougall. Okay, so we were just talking, Valerie, why Santa Fe? Why did you move to Santa Fe?
We moved to Santa Fe in 2007 because in my other life with the CIA, I had worked on nuclear counterproliferation issues, and I went to Los Alamos National Lab quite a bit, working with the physicists, folks up there on covert action, different things. And I generally, if I could, arranged it to stay in Santa Fe and drive up the hill for work as I needed. And it's such a beautiful part of the world. I've lived all over the world. My husband has lived all over Africa. And when it became clear that Washington, D.C. was done, neither one of us had jobs, Santa Fe quickly went to the top of the list of places where could we see ourselves living? And we've been very happy in New Mexico.
That's wonderful.
We love it here.
One of the things that's interesting about Blowback and having a heroine who's working in counter-proliferation is you really sense that she's putting her life on the line. And the fact that you did that kind of work, I just wanted to say thank you for your service, not only to our country, but to the world, because that is an important thing to try to figure out counter-proliferation.
It's something I continue to be passionate about, that whole intersection of terrorism and nuclear weapons. There is nothing more, global now, as we're becoming increasingly aware of global warming, but truly existential in its nature. So I loved what I did. I was really proud of the job that I had.
That's great. That's great. Darren?
Did you get to continue working in non-proliferation at all through non-government NGOs or?
Yes, I'm a leader in something called Global Zero, and it is a group. It's only about 5 years old now. It's international in scope. It is a nonprofit, nonpartisan. Its primary objective is ultimately a world without nuclear weapons, and they were very instrumental in getting the START II treaty passed before the Senate 2 years ago now. They continue to be, I'm really impressed with, and what I like is it draws people from all different levels. You have former prime ministers, generals, students, kings, queens, really quite a wide assortment that are saying, you know, we can't continue the way we are.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah,
great.
absolutely.
Well, getting back to Blowback, I was interested in what it was like to work with a former CIA agent. Did you come across a few conversations where you're like, I'd like to write about this or this scene, and your co-author just went, oh, no comment?
Well, you know, it's always fascinating to have a glimpse of someone. That's a great privilege, to have a variation of the character working with you, because it's such a different world. And I still am absorbing little bits, and have only absorbed a little bit of, you know, what it's like to live that life. And so there was great excitement about that, and I feel very privileged. I know that Valerie has never shared anything, and she was adamant right up front, never shared anything that would, you know, that would violate any of her agreements. So, and fiction, fortunately, so much of what we're dealing with fiction has been out in the fictional arena,
Right.
or in the news,
Yeah.
public domain,
Yeah.
Right.
and open source research. So so really we would have conversations sometimes about shooting, you know, articles back and forth on, you know, Iranian scientists being assassinated, and you know, secret facilities, and just trying to keep ahead of some of the headlines, we hoped, in a way that wasn't wishing bad on the world in any way.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, I think the most fascinating thing for me is I know right away that if there's an area she doesn't want to talk about, she won't go there. And again, really, we don't have to walk in that area at all, because we've got everything going fictionally. And so the other side of that is really for the writers, fiction writers are constantly absorbing character and trying to reach for character and character details and character qualities, and you know, Valerie's an alpha, and she's you know, nobody's in that world without being an alpha. I mean,
Right.
you jump out of the airplane, I'd be, you know, hanging on in the back. But so to try to absorb as much of that as I can, and to put on the page, we work on the page with this character who is Valerie and who is not Valerie, because there's a fictional gap.
Right.
And because there's also a personal privacy to respect, just in the sense of being, right? So fiction is good. You always want to be able to say there's distance.
Yeah, and in this character, you have her doing things like trying to outrun in a car someone who's chasing her, who's an assassin. And even at one point, you have them where their cars are lined up facing each other, and it's like they're about to play chicken. I mean, that's pretty incredible kind of scene that you crafted a character who's that tough. And I
Right.
think that because she's that tough, you're going to draw in a lot of readers. Like, once you get introduced to this character, you want to continue with her. So it's
We
great
hope so.
that
We-
it's a series.
Yes.
We constantly are trying to find that balance of course, making exciting adrenaline, at the same time not veering over into camp, or where it's just
Right.
you know, just
Right.
right,
Right.
where it's over the
Right.
top. I mean, that's
Right.
when I go to most CIA movies or anything to do with espionage, I'm rolling my eyes most of the time, because it's ridiculous.
Yeah.
When they pick up two guns and go
Right.
smash down the enemy headquarters.
Right,
Oh, yeah.
right.